We'll send the reminder.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think it's after lunch, so people might be sleepy or whatever. That's fine. Did we have any questions from the last session? So while
Yes.
waiting for your people to join, you can ask. So just to recap what we did in the last session, um, we created this DC motor model using the first principles. And what we can do in this model is we can put in some voltage, we can put in some torque, and we can see how the motor behaves. So what I've done in this case is I've just drawn a box like this and put in a color area, create area, and labeled as electrical and mechanical. And then instead of a constant input, I'm using the step input for voltage as well. So I start up my motor at a time of 2 seconds and the voltage is 5. Okay, so if you want to get exactly the same model, you can try this. And I hope all of you were able to see this kind of response in the last one. Okay, I think about half the people are back now, so we'll start in another minute. Were there any doubts from the last session at all? Any questions? Any questions about what we did, why we did it, why we are doing all this? Okay, I think people are happy enough. That's okay. So this session, we're going to do something much more exciting. Okay. So what we have here is a DC motor model. And if you see what's happening right now, at a time of 2 seconds, I turn on the voltage of this motor. It starts spinning up and it goes to some speed. And then after a while, after a time of 6 seconds, I apply a torque and the speed of the motor actually falls. Right? You can see this, the speed of the motor falls and then it stabilizes at another position. Okay. Does everyone understand this? Can you please type yes or no? Why this is happening? I hope I'm audible, by the way. Okay, so people understand why this is happening. Yeah. So I turn on the motor at a time of 2 seconds. It spins up to some velocity. And then when I apply the torque from the outside at a time of 6 seconds, the velocity drops and it stabilizes at some other position. Okay, so people don't understand. Okay, so they're saying why the speed falls. Is the torque opposing the source? Yes, of course the torque is opposing the source. Because if you look at this sign, the torque is acting on a negative sign compared to the omega, which is the velocity. So the torque is opposing the velocity of the motor. And always in a real system, this will be the case. Because outside torque will always oppose the motion. Okay, you got it. Saurabh, did you get it? Saurabh? Okay. So I hope everyone understands, right? To give you another example, imagine that you were in a car or something like that. So you press the accelerator on the car at 2 seconds, it goes, and you're now running at some steady velocity. Okay, suddenly a highway comes and one of those flyover bridges comes. You know what a flyover is, right? So suppose the slope of the road changes and we suddenly have to apply much more force. So what's going to happen? Your velocity is going to fall, right? Am I making sense here? If you're driving your car on a straight road to come on a flyover, you suddenly have to go up a slope, your speed is going to fall. I don't know if many of you drive cars, but at least a motorbike you will understand, or even a bicycle. Okay. So now what do you have to do in real life? If you want to oppose this motion, what do you have to do to keep on going at the same speed? Suppose you're in a car or in a bike. As you're climbing up, what do you have to change to maintain the same speed? So we have to increase the energy supplied, correct? We have to accelerate, correct? How do we accelerate? So how do you accelerate in a car? Voltage plus. Okay. So basically, no, you don't increase the horsepower of your engine. Your engine is the same once you put it in the car. What you do is you press on the pedal, that injects more fuel into the system, your car will go faster. Okay, same thing for your electrical circuit. For electrical circuit, it makes sense. You increase the voltage, it will get the velocity back to the right point, even with the torque input. Okay, does that make sense? So if you see that your system has slowed down, you have to change the input. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll try to explain this further as we go along. All right, anyway. Right. So one thing we want to do at this point, I'm going to close my scope. What I want to do now is I just want to figure out how to control this system. So I'm going to supply it certain inputs and I'm going to measure the output. All the mathematics that is inside this, I don't really care about this anymore. Because this is a motor, I have built it, I don't care beyond this point. I've already designed it. Now I just need to figure out a way of controlling it. Okay. So what I want you to do is you move the input blocks a little bit farther to the left side, put all this in the middle, and then move your scope block way out on the right hand side. Okay, so move your inputs to the left, move your output to the right. You can press spacebar if you just want to center your model. Then you select all of this complexity in the middle. So you select all of it except the inputs and outputs. And once you have selected it, you right click and you create subsystem from selection, or you can press Ctrl G. Okay, and once you do this, this entire thing will collapse into a subsystem. Just write yes or no if you're able to do this. I'll explain why we have done this. Okay, so you select everything except your inputs and outputs, and then you press Ctrl G, and it will collapse into a subsystem. I see lots of yeses. People are able to do this. Okay. Now what has happened is all the mathematics, all the complexity of that motor has disappeared inside this block. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can just figure out the high level design now. If I want to go and see the low level design, I can double click on the subsystem. It will take me inside and show me all this. Otherwise, I just hit this up button here and it will take me outside and I just see this. So I can relabel this. I can call this DC motor. Okay. So the advantage of this is Simulink allows me to get rid of all the complexity and focus just on what is important now. All I have to do is find a way to control this system. Yeah, so this is not a function, this is a subsystem. Okay. A subsystem, you double click on it, it will still contain everything inside it. But yeah, it's sort of like a function. Okay, great. So now let's figure out a little bit of control theory before we get into this. All right. So in control theory, what happens is, let me find a pencil. So you have something which is a subsystem. You have an input and you have an output. So let me add these labels. Okay. Now, whatever the system is, we call this as a plant model. This comes from a chemical plant, by the way. This all came out of chemical engineering. So what we are discussing right now is control theory. In my opinion, it's the most important subject in engineering. Some people might disagree, but that's okay. I mean, this is my favorite subject. Okay. So now, supposing that you wanted your system to come to a certain output. Okay. Suppose this was a car and you wanted your car to move at a certain speed. So your output would be speed. First of all, can anyone tell me how the speed would be measured in a car? We're just taking an example of a car because everyone knows what it is, but the concept is the same. Kilometer per hour rate of change. Yeah, that's okay. Speedometer, exactly. So the way you read it is through the speedometer. Okay. So whatever is your speed, that goes into a little box that has a display. And from that, you will get the measurement. And here is your sensor. Okay, so your sensor in a car is going to be the speedometer. Okay, perfect. Right. So now, what is the input? What is the input to your car? I try to use different colors as an example thing. No, speed is not an input to the car. Speed is my output. What is the input of my car? Fuel, not exactly. I just told you what it was. If you want your car to have more speed, what are you going to do? So if you want your car to move faster, what are you going to do? Acceleration. Okay, how do you make your car accelerate? You press down on the pedal, right? Yeah, you push the accelerator. Okay, so that's the input. So the input is how much you press the accelerator pedal. Now, whatever is happening inside the car, you don't actually know what it is. I mean, I don't think most of you are mechanical engineers. I can tell you when you press an accelerator pedal, it opens up a fuel intake valve. That puts more fuel into the engine. That generates more in the piston. That sends more torque down the drivetrain. That turns the wheels faster. That gives you speed. But we don't care about all that because that is contained inside the model. We don't care. The only thing you need to know is I press on this pedal, my speed goes faster. That is the advantage of modeling something as a subsystem. In the same way, in the DC motor, you supply the voltage, it goes through the coil, it overcomes inductance, resistance, blah, blah. I don't care. All I care about is you increase the input. So your input goes up, your output goes up, your input goes down, your output goes down. Does this make sense? Okay. So the advantage of control theory is once you have built your plant model, you don't have to worry about what is inside it. All you have to worry about is how do I control my input and set it at the right value. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Sensors, we always have sensors, they're never perfect, but right now we will just assume a perfect sensor. So my signal is going to go straight through. I'll just assume it's measuring everything perfectly. Okay. Now let's think about it. So I have a signal which is a demand value. Okay. This is my demand value, which I'll say how fast should my car go. Okay, so I have some demand value. Maybe someone is sitting next to me and they are saying, hey, drive at 60 kilometers per hour or drive at 80 kilometers per hour. That's the demand value. Now, if I want to figure out if my input should be higher or lower, how can I get that number? Any ideas? So I know what this is. Oh, sorry about this. I know what this is. I know what this is. I have to figure out this. Okay. Any ideas on what I can do with these two numbers? You compare it. Exactly right. You subtract it. Exactly right. Yeah. Okay. So suppose that I was going at 50 kilometers. Sorry, wrong place. Suppose that I was going at 50 kilometers per hour and I should be going at 80 kilometers per hour. So from here, if I subtract this number from this number, that will tell me I have a margin of plus 30, right? If I have a margin of plus 30 and this sign is positive, what should I do here? So you're on the right track. So I'm going to subtract this. I'm going to get plus 30. What should I do here? Increase the input. Not 30 more because you can't apply 30 kilometers per hour on an accelerator pedal. But if this symbol is positive, your input should be going up. If this was negative, then I would be going down. Okay. So in control theory, what we do is we have a block like this, which is just a subtractor block or a comparator block. And you take the signal and you get the error value out. Okay. And whatever is the sign of that error, your input is proportional to this. So E stands for error signal. Is it clear so far? Any doubts? Any doubts so far? Anybody? Okay, it's clear so far. Okay. So basically my task is that I have to convert this error signal here into some input signal. And the system that does that is known as the controller. this is called as the controller. What is the controller in your car, by the way? So this system is called the controller. No, engine is part of the car itself. Okay, who's the controller in your car? Steering? No, we're not changing a direction. The man, not the gearbox. Gearbox, pedal, everything is in the car. Who is the controller of the car? The controller of the car is the driver. Exactly right. Okay. So if you think about it, my driver knows how fast my car should go. He can read the speedometer. Because he's intelligent, he can decide, should I go faster or should I go slower? He or she presses down on the accelerator pedal or raises their leg. The car moves faster and the measurement comes back. Okay, this is known as a feedback control system. And in my opinion, I mean, people talk about machine learning and deep learning as if that was artificial intelligence. But in my opinion, actually, this is the root of artificial intelligence. And this has been around since the 1960s, by the way. All right. Does this make sense to everybody? So just put in yes, no. If there are any doubts, just let me know. All right. I can tell you that this simple circuit that you have here, this is basically responsible for human civilization in some ways of the last 50 years at least. Because no matter which system you will pick up, it has this kind of controller inside it. Your car has it, your airplane has it, your phone has it, your air conditioner has it, your fridge has it. Anything electronic basically has this kind of system inside it. Okay, let's do this exercise. Suppose you set the temperature of your fridge at, I don't know, 0 degrees Celsius. You take the measurement. It's got an automatic brain inside it, right? So it takes the measurement. Temperature is 4 degrees. Error signal is +4. So the controller inside turns up the cooling system. The fridge cools down. You take the measurement again until it's balanced out. Okay. Suppose you demanded 0 degrees, it's going to -4. Error will be negative. This will reduce the cooling system and the temperature of your fridge should rise. Same thing for your airplane. Suppose you want to fly at a certain altitude. You set the autopilot at 10,000 meters or 50,000 meters, whatever it is. The plane with its altimeter is going to check what is the altitude. It's going to generate the error signal. It's going to feed it to the autopilot. Autopilot is going to take the altitude up or down. Same thing for your satellites. Same thing for pretty much, I mean, anything that we use. So this loop, this feedback control system is everywhere. And that's why I always say this is my favorite system. Even in the human body, okay, if you want to lift your hand and you want to, let's say, pick up an object. So your sensors are your eyes. Your plant model is basically your own body. So you will see if my hand is reaching the object by measuring with your eyes. Your brain will control the motion of your hand and you will perform whatever action you need. So this is actually everywhere, even in biological systems. And ever since I've learned about it, I really love it. And this is basically what Simulink is built for. So if you understand, we've just made a block diagram here, right? Simulink can represent this directly. And this is why Simulink is used everywhere in industry. Because these systems are used everywhere. All right. So let's try to figure out how to control our DC motor in this case. All right. So we're going to go back to Simulink. This, by the way, is a disturbance. So we'll deal with this later. Right now, I'm just going to set my disturbance torque to 0. So I'll delete that step block and I'll just put in a 0 signal to my torque. One of the things your control system can do is it can actually reject disturbances from outside. Okay. So voltage input is something that will be supplied by a controller, right? Now, what I want to do first of all is I want to set up a demand signal. I want my motor to run at, let's say, 1 radians per second. Measurement, obviously, I can take from the right hand side. And I'm just going to assume a perfect sensor for now. So I'm not going to make a model of the sensor. Sign should be plus minus because we're doing comparing. Okay, this is my error signal E. And what goes in here in this space? I'll just make this an area. Okay, so what goes in this space? Can you see the same structure coming out? There's a question how to convert it to plant model. Yeah, you basically select everything except the input and output and just press Ctrl G. Okay, so the controller should go into this space, right? But we don't actually know what a controller is right now. So what we're going to learn in the next half hour is how to design a controller, how to make a controller. And what I'm going to teach you is called the PID controller. That's used everywhere in the industry. So it should be useful, hopefully. Okay. So let's just take this system for now. I have a DC motor. I put in a voltage, no torque right now, and I can measure the output speed. So this is measurement. And another thing I want to do probably is just measure the speed with respect to the demand signal. So you can right click on your scope, signals and ports, and the number of input ports you can set to 2. And then you can get in your demand and your measurement signals simultaneously. Okay. So first of all, let me just connect this straight through and let me run it and see what happens. So how to get the plus minus operator? You just double click, type sum. So you get the sum block from the math operations. Double click on it and change the plus to plus minus. And that will get you this operator. Or you can use the rectangular block. It doesn't make any difference. Okay. Model to this state. And then type yes in the window. So I'll wait until then. Okay, right now we have not put in a controller because we are going to figure out how to make our own controller. But when we make it, it will go into this space here. Okay, if anyone wants me to repeat any step, just let me know. Otherwise, when you're done, just type yes. Okay, one person has done it. We can wait. So if anyone has any doubts, let A couple of my colleagues are also here, so they can answer in the chat. So all you have to do is collapse your thing into a subsystem. Take the measurement this side, put it into this block in the minus sign, make a constant demand, put it in the plus side, connect both of these to a scope, and connect the error signal straight through into the input. Okay, some people have done some of it, I guess. I'm going to give you another couple of minutes because I'd like everyone to get this work, please. Okay, so just type yes when you're done. So I'm assuming a perfect sensor right now. If you want, you can put in a sensor here later on. I'm assuming right now, whatever is the measurement, your sensor reports it perfectly. So you can pass the signal directly. But it's a good question because in real life, your sensors actually always cause some delay in the system. So for real systems, we always have a sensor model as well. But right now we won't bother. Okay, so people have done it. Okay, so now I want you to run the model and open up your scope block. And you can turn on the legend by going to view. And you see something interesting here. Okay, so I am demanding that my signal should go to 1, but my motor rises only to about 0.1. If you want to make this easier to read, what you can do is you can go to view, then style, and you can make the line for the demand, let's say 1 in thickness and maybe red colored. And then the second measurement line, you can make it again 1 in thickness and maybe same color. And if you want, you can change your figure colors and things as well. So I like to keep it a little bit light personally. It's okay. I mean, you can mess around with this if you want, but it's not compulsory. Okay, I've broken my own settings. Yeah, so if you want to adjust the style, you can just do it from here. You can change the color of the lines and so on. I'll just make them a little bit thicker so we can see it. Okay, so this red line, dashed line is the demand, and this blue line is the measurement. So you can go to view and style and then mess around with this if you want. Otherwise, you can just leave it. Now, what I have to do is I have to get this blue line basically all the way up till the red line. Okay. So any ideas what I should do to just raise this? How do I make the blue line bigger in value? A gain block, right? So if I have a measurement signal, I just multiply it by some number, it should become bigger. So if this is 0.1 right now, I want it to be 1. Maybe I should just apply a gain of 10. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll go here, I'll get a gain. I'll put it in the circuit and I'll call this 10. Now, if you realize what this gain is doing, it's just doing a direct proportional multiplication. So this is your proportional gain. So you can call it proportional if you want. And when you run it, you get something like this. So just type yes when you manage to do this much. Then we'll see what to do next. Okay, a couple of people have done it. Is anyone facing any issues? Sir, can you tell me how to use DC motor? I mean, where is a DC motor used, or like what are you asking? What do you mean how to get it? I mean, we made this in the last session. If you just want to get this block, you can select everything we did in the last session except the inputs and outputs, and then press Ctrl G. So that will collapse it into a subsystem, and then you can relabel it as DC motor. Okay, right. So answer me this question. So we multiplied it by 10 and we got halfway there, but it's still not all the way there. Okay, so what should we do? What can we do more here? We can go to 20. Yeah, so we can try a higher gain. So maybe we put in 20 and we run it again. And this time it's even higher, and you see this little bump and then it settles down. Okay, let's try to get it really big. I'll make it 200. So it does cross at 200 actually. It oscillates and it settles down. So it never quite meets this area. Okay, let me make this a bit easier to see here. This is what the signal looks like. So there's two things we need to fix here. One is that our time steps are too large. So one thing we need to do is fix our time steps, and next I'll tell you what is happening here. All right. So to fix your time steps, I'll tell you about the gain. Okay. So you want to go to the modeling tab, then go to model settings, this gear icon, or press Ctrl E. And where you are seeing the solver details here, you go to solver details and you put the max step size as 0.1. So what is happening is inside Simulink, there's already a solver built in which uses a large step size. So we are just going to make it smaller so we get a smooth curve. You can see we have a bunch of solvers here. So OD45, OD23. There are various order solvers, both fixed step and variable step. So this Euler method we saw in the morning is here, OD1. OD4 is Rangekata. This is also here. If you go to variable step, by default, we use OD45. So this is a fourth and fifth order combined solver. You don't need to know the details now, just you can know it exists here. Simulink uses these very advanced solvers by default. So you just reduce the maximum step size and we will get a smooth curve. So you go to model settings or press Ctrl E, open up the solver details and put the max step size as 0.1 and then just hit OK. Okay, and that should make your graph a little bit smoother. You can make it even smaller if you want. So there's some question, isn't it inappropriate as if our demand changes, then we have to change our proportion also? I mean, our proportion should be some way related to demand and automated. You don't have to change it with the demand. If you set your demand to 10, you will see almost the same kind of result. And yes, you're right. I mean, it actually, we do have a way of automating it. Okay, so you can change your demand to 10, but the shape of the graph will look the same. So there's some more fundamental problem here actually. Okay, so I'm just going to recap what we have done so far. Okay, I've set my demand to 10 here. You can set it to whatever number, it makes no difference. So first of all, we just tried a gain of 1. And this graph was down here. Okay, we increased our gain to 10. This is the proportional gain. And this graph goes up a little bit, but it's still not caught up. We increase this to 100. Graph goes up even more. It actually overshoots, but then it settles down and you still see some error. Can anyone guess why this is happening? Can anyone guess here why this is happening? Inertia, not exactly. It's something to do with the mathematics of how this is configured. Heating of the motor, no. Torque, no. Okay, I'll tell you. Okay. So just imagine we are here right now at time step number 0. Okay. Your demand is 10. What will my error signal be? So I'm here at time step 0. My demand is 10. Measurement is 0. What will my error signal be? Plus 10, right? Plus 10. So that's a huge number. So suddenly I get a number of 10 here. I multiply that by 100. I get a value of 1000. So I'm putting in 1000 volts into this DC motor. You don't even have a grid that large. Okay. So I'm putting in 1000 volts. Suddenly the motor jumps up and then it overshoots. What happens if my measurement is more than my demand? So what happens if my measurement is more than my demand signal? At this point here, negative error, right? So it pulls me down again. So the input decreases, it pulls me down, it settles to this point. Now imagine I'm sitting here at a value of 9.5. Okay, so my measurement is 9.5. My demand is 10. So what is my error signal now? So my demand is 10, measurement is 9.5. What is my error? It's just 0.5. So I have an error signal which is just 0.5. So I halve this value, I put in 50 volts now. And that keeps my motor spinning at a certain speed. Now what you have to understand is, no matter how much I increase the value of this gain, some error will remain. This is called as a steady state error, because as this error becomes smaller and smaller, your voltage output also becomes smaller and smaller directly here. Because as soon as your error goes to 0, you'll be putting out 0 volts and then your motor will again drop. So there is some problem here, right? Do we all understand there is a problem here? Yes or no? Okay. So what we need to do basically is we need some way to add up this error signal over time. We need to take this error signal of the difference, we need to add it up over time, And we also need to generate that much extra voltage just to get rid of this difference here. Okay, so if I have to add up the area under a curve over time, what is that called? If I have to add the area under a curve, integration, right? Exactly. So you see this mathematics sort of folds in on itself, and you find you need an integrator here again. So let's do something here. Let's get an integrator block. And as the input, we'll take in the error signal, and then we'll add in another gain here. I'll just make this 1. Okay, and this is the integrator gain. Oops, I'll call this I just to be short. So I stands for integrator. Or integral actually. And then I'm going to get another sum block. And then I'm just going to have 3 plus signs here. Okay, so I'm going to take the integration of the error signal. The gain is just 1 right now. And I'm going to add it to the proportional gain that was already there. Why am I doing this? To get rid of that little error, this error. So I'm going to take this error, I'm going to add it up over time, and I'm going to get rid of this. So when you rearrange this to be this way, and you run it again, you find that it hasn't actually done much because your integrator gain is too small. So maybe I need to just increase this. I'll make it 10. Okay, now we see over time the gap is closing. I'll try to make it maybe 50. And now you see over time the signal actually converges and it's a perfect match. So just let me know yes when you get this far. Okay, yes, most people have gotten here. Okay, so now if I zoom in here, I see I still have another problem. And my problem is it is not going straight to that value, but it is still overshooting. And then it is coming down and then it is oscillating a few more times. So if my motor had to go to this speed, I don't want it to go to extra speed. Okay, because I don't want my lift or my system to start with a jerk and then settle down. This is like bad engineering right here. You don't want this kind of oscillation. Imagine if someone was sitting on that lift, which is driven by this DC motor. As soon as this thing starts, you will get a big jerk. So this will be uncomfortable and then this will start settling down to the right value. So we need a faster response. And we also want this oscillation not to be there. We want a much more smooth thing. Okay. So what you can do is you can also reduce the value of your proportional gain a little bit. Maybe I'll call it 80. So you play around with these things. Still that is there. So what we need to do is we basically need to look into the future just to check how the slope of this error is changing. Okay. So if you want to find out the slope of something, what is that called mathematically? Differential. Yeah, perfect, right? That's called differentiation, because I want to check the slope of this error. So what do? I type derivative and I get this block. And then I add another gain here. And this is called my D gain, my derivative. So P stands for proportional, I stands for integral, and D stands for derivative. This is known as a PID controller. And this is one of the most powerful control techniques, not powerful exactly, but most widely used control techniques. Because you are checking the value, you're removing the error, and you're also making sure the slope matches to some extent. So you have the proportional gain, which goes directly. You have the integrator gain, and then you have the derivative gain. You add up all of them, and this thing here becomes your controller. Okay, so let's now run this system again. And you see it looks much nicer. It's still going over a little bit, but it's smooth. It's not that jerky bad motion. Okay, just let me know when you get this far, and then we'll have one final thing. Yeah, just type yes or no when you're done. Okay, brilliant. I think people are following. Okay, cool. So now we have a PID controller. It's pretty nice. I'm happy with it. But the thing is, I don't want to have to guess what these numbers are. I don't want to play around with this. You can if you want to, but I think I should have a smarter way of doing this. Okay, so when you study control theory, you will study a whole bunch of mathematics about how to select these gains because it's very important. Certain systems will actually go unstable if you choose a bad gain, and they will just keep on oscillating. So what we can actually do is we delete this whole thing that we just made. Just select it and delete it. You go to the library browser and then into the continuous library. And from there, you can find a PID controller, which is like a built-in block in Simulink, and that has an advantage, which you'll see in a second. Okay, my software is stuck. Right, so you go to Simulink, continuous library, and you find this block, the PID controller. Okay, PID controller in the continuous library, and you just drag it out. Now inside this PID controller, this is a single block that does everything, all of that. And plus it can do a couple of more things as well. So if you open the PID block, you can see we can put in 3 numbers here. So you can put in the proportional, the integral, the derivative gain directly. You can also put in a filtering coefficient if you want to get rid of some noise. Now either we can put in the numbers we had figured out, which was like 80, 100, 50 or something. Or what we can do is, instead of manually trying to figure this out, we just go here in the bottom right hand corner. And if you have the control system toolbox installed, you can just click this button and it will open the PID tuner app. So you remember the Deep Network Designer app from yesterday, right? So this is another app which will just automate everything for you. So you just put in a PID controller, open it by double clicking, and then scroll down on the right hand side. You see this button tune, and then you press it. Okay, so when it loads up, what you will see is a screen that looks like this guy here. So this dashed blue line is your current response, and the solid blue line to be the response you will get after tuning it. This is called tuning a controller. And Simulink, you can see, is actually smart enough that it will work out what the optimum values are. So you don't have to guess anything. If you're happy with this, you can just hit the green button. If you want, you can also change it a little bit. So you can make your response time faster, and you can make it more robust. So you have less offshoot, but usually there's a range of values which actually work. So I'm okay with it being sort of this kind of behavior. And there's a little bit of an art form how to tune it. So in less than 1 second, my controller will reach the right value in just half a second, basically, with these values. So you just adjust these two on the top, and then you hit the green button. It will update all the numbers. And then you can close this, and you can see new values will be in there. So you get some new values. And then you can hit OK. And when you run it again, you should see a very nice performance from the controller. Okay, so this is beautiful. Like if you got a result like this in real life, you'd be very happy. Because in less than 1 second, your controller goes to the right value and there's no significant oscillations or anything. It's just smooth. Just let me know yes if you're done with this. And the best part about this is as long as you can build a plant model properly, right? You just use the PID controller and it doesn't matter what your plant is. It can be a car, an airplane, a robot, or whatever. The PID controller still works. And you can put in any demand, you can put in any plant model, and it will figure out how to do this. So this is what most people in the industry actually use as well. I used to use this when I was working for a company. So the steps are, you put in a PID controller, you go down and tune, you hit the green button to update, you hit OK on the dialog box, and then you just run it and you should get this nice performance. No, I'm not going to paste the values of the PID. You tune it yourself. That's the whole point of this. So you can open up the PID block, scroll down, and the right hand side you have the tune button. You open that. That will automatically set the values, and then you press the green button and it should tune the controller automatically. Is anybody having any problem with that thing? Okay, people are saying no. Okay, so are you all able to get something similar to this? Okay, you don't have the app. Right, so you need to install the control systems toolbox in that case. I did ask everyone to install everything, so I think the values are E65 I191. The values are not important, you understand. What's important is this entire process of how to make this. Okay, so now let me show you something more interesting. Now we are also going to add in some torque disturbance. So I'm going to delete this constant torque and I'm going to get a step function. And once I attach the step function at a step time of, let's say, 7 seconds, I'm going to put in a value of 0.1. It's a very large disturbance. So at a step time of 7 seconds, I put in a final value of 0.1. So what is going to happen is it's going to pull my motor down very strongly. But what you'll see is the controller will be able to adjust and it will pull the value back up. So it's about there. Okay, so if you have a nicely tuned controller, even if you put the outside disturbance, it will be able to maintain the same velocity without having any significant trouble. And that's the value of having control systems. So you don't have to do anything manually. You just set up the plant model, put in a PID controller, and if you tune it properly, your system will be able to withstand outside disturbances as well, and it will maintain a nice velocity. Has everyone gotten this far? Got a large error. Just check your signs are right. You need to have plus minus signs. Okay, so people have gotten, so mostly people are getting it, so it's fine. So right now we had a steady demand signal, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the demand signal itself in shape. I'm going to make it a ramp signal, which continuously increases. So where my demand was, instead of this constant block, I just delete it and I get a ramp. And this ramp will keep on increasing the demand constantly. And even when I run this model again, you can see my controller is able to follow the shape properly, and still it is able to reject the disturbance. Okay, so this is where Simulink becomes really powerful, because you can put in any random signal you like here. Whatever the demand is, your controller will be able to follow it and drive exactly along that path. So this is the same thing we use in robotics. Suppose your demand signal was a sinusoidal signal, like a sine wave. So you would have to go up and then down and then up and then down. You can do that. If you have a pulse signal, which is a sharp up, sharp down, you can do that as well. So from the sources library, you can get in any signal you want and you can try this out. Let's say instead of a ramp signal, I get a pulse generator. And let's say I have a amplitude of 10 and a period of 5 and a pulse width of 50. So this is the pulse generator block. You will get another type of performance. Okay, so no matter what is the shape of the demand, the controller will be able to figure out a way to follow it. It will be more difficult for more sharp signals, but still it's doing a fair enough job actually. Right, so I'll just pause here for a while. If there are any questions, let me know. So there's a question, can we make our own controller? Yes, so that's what we did before, right? We made our own controller from scratch. The PID is a standard one, so that's why we have a block for this. But Beyond this, in Simulink, you can do lots of control systems. So you have model predictive control, you have reinforcement learning, which is a type of AI. Then we have, I think, QRMS control, and there's a couple of other types. I forget what the name is. So there are lots of control models. And if you specialize as a control engineer, you can learn a lot of them. If we don't use the PID controller, we'll be able to adjust with different signals. Depends on which controller you use. I mean, every controller does some amount of tracking. PID is actually a very simple method. For more complex controllers, you won't even see this bump. It will just do it perfectly. Does quadcopters follow the same PID concept? Yes. So quadcopters have exactly the same type of controller. The only difference is the plant model inputs are the fan speed. So you measure the angle with the gyroscope of a quadcopter and you change the voltage of the fans. The fans, push more air or less air, and it uses a PID controller to control its altitude or orientation or whatever you like. Okay, so in library browser, I think if you have control system toolbox, no, it's not there. Anyway, I mean, you can look at courses with control systems for MATLAB, and you have lots of things. We can see inside PIDs how it is working. I don't understand what that question is. I explained the whole thing, how it works. So if you're still confused about this, do the control systems on ramp. So that's in the training course again. Okay, so I'll post one link. There is this video on PID control, and then I'll post the on ramp as well. If you want to elaborate the question, that's fine. Otherwise, you can go through these videos. They will explain specifically what is happening there. This video series is really good. You can go and check it out. Or this on-ramp course has everything. So you can go and complete either of these. Okay. All right, so we'll have another 3-4 minute break, and then I'll teach you Simscape Electrical. So we'll build the same system in Simscape. I'll tell you what that is. All right, I hope this has been interesting. Just let's come back after 3-4 minutes. Okay, sorry. I went to get some tea. It took a little longer. Yeah, questions so far? Any questions? Are you still awake? I'm getting very tired now. Okay, are people following so far? We'll try to finish a little bit earlier because I know everyone is tired. Okay, I think people are there. All right, cool. So you can save this model if you want. We'll come back to it later. Okay, that's a lot of yeses. So people are still there. Yeah, I know. I'm also tired. So I'll teach you Simscape quickly and then we'll end maybe. I think this one goes till 4 o'clock. So we'll have a little break. And then we'll finish the last one very quickly. We won't spend too much time. Okay. Right. So the next thing to show you mainly is if you go to library browser here, so far what we've been looking at are these blocks which have inputs and outputs, and these are just numerical functions. But there's something else that also comes in MATLAB or Simulink, which is really, really powerful, and that is called as the Simscape libraries. Let me open that. Now inside Simscape, we have a bunch of advanced blocks such as driveline, electrical, fluids, foundation libraries, and multibody. And the great advantage of this is you can model multi-domain systems, and you can do it without knowing what the mathematics is. So all morning we've been trying to figure out what the maths is, and it's getting very complicated. But with Simscape, you just need to put in the components and it works quite easily, right? So let's see how to make the same DC motor in Simscape. And I'm going to teach you Simscape electrical quite quickly. And then we'll take a break and then we'll figure out the multi-body part in the evening. Okay, so you can go and make a new model at this point. Just make a new blank model. And open up the library browser side by side and just make sure you're in the Simscape part of it. So are you able to find the Simscape libraries? Yes, no? If you're on the desktop version, you might not have installed it. So you need to install the full MATLAB. I did ask in advance of the session to install the full version. Online, it should be there. So if you want to switch to online, you should be able to find it. So if you're on the desktop version and you don't have the library installed, just go to MATLAB Online. It will have the Simscape library. I'm just double checking it's all there. So if you install MATLAB on the desktop, you should install the full version. I mean, after this session as well, because the only way you get access to all the features is if you actually install them. So if you want, you can switch to MATLAB Online for this part. Multibody does not work on MATLAB Online. So I think that one I'll just demo quickly because I don't think most people have access to that anyway. Okay, so if you're on MATLAB Online, you should be able to scroll down in the library browser. And you should be able to see the Simscape there. Okay, so I want you to go to Simscape and then click on the foundation library, please. And just type in yes when you see this page. So could you mute, please, whoever that was? Okay, fine. So I think people have found it now. Okay. So basically inside Simscape, what happens is electrical library and then electrical elements. So what you'll see is we directly have a bunch of component level models here. We have a capacitor, diode, gyrator, transformer, inductor, op-amp, etc. We directly have these components. So instead of figuring out what is my circuit and then writing down the equations and then trying to simulate it, with Simscape, you can directly simulate the circuit. Yeah, so in Simscape, open the foundation library. Inside foundation library, open the electrical, and then in electrical elements. Okay, so in Simscape, you have these foundation libraries which have the simple components, and then you have the detailed electrical libraries, for example, which have the much more advanced components. So your semiconductors, integrated circuits, motors, power systems, etc. So right now we are just using the basic in the foundation library. Okay, so I'm going to basically teach you how to work with Simscape because it is probably the most powerful tool that we have, and most people don't know how to use it at all. So I'm just going to teach you how to use Simscape today. And from the examples, you can learn the rest of the things. So the concept in Simscape is that each of these physical domains has a specific color. So electrical elements are all in green color. And rotational mechanical components are in this light green. Translational are in dark green. Thermal are in orange color. So you can connect components of the same color together, but not any other colors. So you can connect an electrical component to an electrical component, but you can't connect it to a mechanical component because it doesn't make any sense unless it's through a converter like a motor. Okay, so let's make a simple circuit first to understand how it works. So just go into the electrical elements and pick out a resistor first of all. And could you mute please that person? Okay, so pick out a resistor and just drop it. Okay, so now you can see plus and minus terminals, and you can see this is blue colored. Now, what we want to do is let's go to electrical sources and let's get a controlled voltage source. Controlled voltage source. And we drag and drop it here. Okay, so this looks exactly like, you know, the diagrams that we draw in class, right? So you can connect the plus to the plus just by dragging and connecting. Cool. And then you can connect the minus side to the minus side. Maybe we just add an ammeter in the middle. So you can go to electrical sensors and get a current sensor out. Where does a current sensor go in a circuit? Series or parallel? Current sensor goes in series, right? Yeah. So we just connect this in series and then we close the circuit. Okay, so this is a basic electrical circuit. We have a voltage source, we have a resistor and an ammeter. The simplest thing that we can make. The trick with Simscape is if you try to run this now, you will not get any result. So there's a little trick to getting this working, and that trick is what I want to show you. Everything else you can understand. It's very, very simple beyond that. So the thing is, this controlled voltage source needs to get a signal from outside to tell it what the value of voltage should be, just like a constant block. But let's say I get a constant block and I put in a value of 12 volt. Connect this together, it won't work. And you'll see why in a second. Okay. So I have a signal which is like this red line or this black line. This is a numerical value, but it will not be able to connect into my electrical circuit because this is actual, it's just like physical hardware. You can't feed a number into a wire, you have to convert that number into a physical signal. In the same way, if I try to take the measurement out, I cannot put this directly into a scope because this is a physical current value. I need to convert it into a number. So the trick in Simscape is that you have to go to this utilities menu and you have to get these two converters there. So you have physical signal to Simulink converter, and then you have Simulink to physical signal converters. Just get one of each. Okay, so the current, I'm going to take physical signal and convert it into a Simulink black line. And for the voltage, I'm going to take in a Simulink number and I'm going to convert it into a physical voltage. And now you see the circuit actually joins up. I can put in a scope as well. Okay. And what we can also do is we can go to electrical elements and we can get this electrical reference because you need to earth everything, right? So you take this electrical reference and you earth the negative side. Okay, so just type yes when everyone has come this far. By the way, if you want to change the value of the resistance, just double click on the resistor and set it to some value. I'll set it to 2 ohms. So once you assemble all this, just tell me yes. Or if you have any doubts, just ask. If one person has done it, two people have done it. Yes, okay. Okay. So now what will happen is when I try to run this model, it will actually throw another error. So I hit run and it will throw an error. It will say each physical network must be connected to exactly one solver configuration block. All right. So the meaning of this is we are missing one block which needs to connect to every single physical network we make. These things that we're working on, they're not exactly Simulink block, they're physical networks. I mean, you understand we haven't put in any equation here, we've put in just components. So you need to attach a special kind of block to tell Simulink that this is a physical network. And this is just one trick that you have to know to get it working. Otherwise, it's very easy. So you again go to utilities, you pick up the solver configuration block, and you can it will work. So I just attach it here. That's the solver configuration. That just tells Simscape that this is a network. And when we run it now, you will see the network. And you will see the right answer in the scope. So I set this resistor at 2. My input voltage is 12. So I get a value of 6 amps from the ammeter. Okay, so it's really simple. You basically make exactly the circuit you need. You just have to connect the converter blocks from physical signal to Simulink and other way around. And you have to connect one solver configuration block. Other than that, you can make any circuit you like that you draw in the classroom here, and it will just solve for it. Okay, so just let me know when you're done with this. Right, so solver configuration, you just go to utilities, pick up a solver configuration block, and attach it anywhere in the model. So you have to attach one solver configuration block anywhere in the network. So you just attach it, run it, and it should work. Okay, great. So, I mean, that's basically all there is to it with Simscape, especially Simscape Electrical. Now, the best place to start is what you can do is you can go to the documentation and you can open up any example that you need. So I'm just going to close this model now. And I'm going to show you what's there in the documentation, and then we'll end this session for now. So if you go back to MATLAB, closing everything, and you type doc Simscape. Okay. We add the solver configuration because it's needed, because it's not numbers, it's a physical network. So Simulink needs to be told that this is a physical network. It's just a scaffolding thing, you have to do it. Okay, so you go into MATLAB and type doc Simscape, and this documentation page should open up. So if you want to learn the basics, you can go to Get Started. But if you just look in the examples, you'll find out there's a whole bunch of examples already built in here. So you can see mechanical systems. You can see lots of electrical systems. So RC circuit, cascaded RC circuit, shunt motor, battery examples, lots of battery ones, then BJT, so bipolar transistor, then op amps. I hope you know what some of these words mean. And then you have electromagnetic systems, so transformer, which is an electrical transformer. Then hydraulic models, so they're all inside Simscape, basically they all connect to each other. And then thermal liquid models, so to model pipelines. Then your refrigeration models and turbine models. So it's all in Simscape. And the best part is you don't have to really understand the maths. As long as you can build the model, Simscape will work out what the mathematics should be. You just have to build the model with the components that are given. Okay, so I'm not going to cover the rest of it today, but what you can do in your own time is you can open up any of these examples and just run through it. Or you can go through this example, creating a new circuit, and just copy the link address. Oops. Yeah, it is not working. So you can just go to doc and see how to create a new circuit. It will teach you what each of those different components does. So what a diode does, what an inductor does, etc. And you can figure out how to build your own circuits inside Simscape. Okay, so is it clear what Simscape is and how to use it? I know the multi-body we haven't covered. There's another session for that one. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to take a break until I think 4:30 is the next session. And then that one will finish in maybe half an hour or 45 minutes as well. Because I've taught you the basics now. I'll just show you how to connect the mechanical components, and then I'll show you how you connect the multi-body components for robotics. So I think the last one, no, the last one is at 4:10. So we can have a half an hour break at this point. And we'll finish in half an hour or so. All right, so if you have any questions, meanwhile, just think of them, write them down. And I'm going to come back in half an hour at 4:10. And then we'll finish up for the day. If anyone wants to install anything, you can go to MATLAB and then get add-ons. And from there, you can add any missing toolboxes or whatever you have. So if you go to add-ons and just type whatever you need, you should be able to add it from there straight away. Or you might need to run the installer again just to add any missing toolboxes. Okay. Cool. So back in half an hour then. Thanks.